The views and opinions expressed in the Distracted Librarians podcast do not necessarily reflect those of Bloomfield Township Public Library, Bloomfield Community Television, the Birmingham Area Cable Board, or its producers or production staff.
Hello and welcome. We're the Distracted Librarians, your friendly neighborhood bookworms who can't resist the siren call of movies, video games, music, and everything else in the pop culture universe.
Think of this podcast as a digital campfire where we share our latest obsessions, analyze the hidden depths of our favorite distractions, and maybe rediscover the joy of reading in between.
So, if you're a fellow media junkie, a book lover, or someone looking for a fun, engaging escape from your daily grind, you've come to the right place.
Hey everybody, this is the Distracted Librarians, and today we are going to be talking about book clubs.
I love my book club.
I like doing book clubs for sure.
It's funny because as a person, if I were a patron of the library, I could never join one because I'm very, very bad at making time for books that I haven't mentally processed. Oh, this is what I want in this moment. It's very a mood-based gimme when I read.
Yeah.
So the knowledge of there's a book club coming up. I have 9 days to read this. I'm not touching this book.
Yeah. It seems like there might be a lot of pressure, but I see why people love them.
I understand the concept and why people love them, but so I did try to join one at my local library a while ago, pre-COVID, and I went to the meeting where they were setting up this book club and talked to people. People seemed cool, great, never went again.
Oh.
I still occasionally get emails about this. I don't live in the same city anymore.
Okay, well, there you go.
But I still occasionally get emails about this book club. But I also am a person who, if I have to read something, I cannot read it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm an only child. I don't like people telling me to do things. I mean, it is a thing you volunteer for. You're signing up. Nobody's holding a gun to my head making me sign up for this book club. But there's still that pressure of hey, you got to do this thing.
Yeah. Being an English major, when I struggle so hard to read things that I have to read, a wild choice.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel self-conscious in groups. So, particularly with groups that I don't know well. So I'm with you guys. Going to a library and being hello, it's me. I've never met anyone, but let's talk about a book. I would be so aware of my own opinions that I wouldn't say them.
Okay.
Because I don't know everybody.
Yeah.
So your struggle wouldn't be on reading the book; it would be about talking about the book.
Yes,
That's
I
interesting.
think I would be I read it. I can't say anything about it, but I did read it. Yeah.
This is making me so much more appreciative of my book club women who don't have either of these hang-ups. They must be so strong.
Oh, I know. Well, when you're listening to these conversations of these groups, and particularly groups that have been
together for a
long time.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just this. The meeting starts at this time and the conversation goes until the very end because there is no such shyness.
Yeah,
which
and
is
then
cool.
they've probably talked about it while they were reading it, just texting each other or calling each other on the phone. It's a whole process, I bet.
Yeah.
Now that I enjoy doing. I love buddy reading with someone. And I've used both Discord and very briefly Storygraph and wasn't a huge fan of it to facilitate that.
Okay.
And it's so much fun.
Nice.
Yeah, I really like that too, where you'll either get a recommendation from somebody and then read it, and then what I weirdly do is I'll live stream them, this is the part that I'm on, and these are my impressions, either on text or Facebook Messenger or something like that, which is odd, but it feels like this shared experience. But I do love buddy reading if we're doing that at the same time.
I can't do it at the same time because, again, that falls into I have to.
Yeah,
I have to keep up. Or it hits the weird competitive thing, and then it gets weird too.
Yeah.
But anytime, this happens mostly with Drew, honestly. If he has read it and said, you should read this, and then I read it, I just end up scream texting him as I read it.
At 3:30 in the morning.
Oh my goodness gracious.
When we're both awake.
Well, anytime that, and I think that that's part of the fun of a book club or a book buddy system is any time that someone says, we should read this or you should read this, even if you're like, oh, okay, sometimes it's about the person.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
And it's just sort of like, because I'm with you, Killian. Like I kind of get like my hackles up a little bit when I have to do something or whatever, or there's a time frame, or it just kind of like I get disinterested. But if someone else is just like, okay, we're gonna do this together, it becomes an activity rather than like this task that I have to do. Like,
I like that.
Yeah.
Like there have been a couple of books that everyone in my book club, myself included, could not stand.
Yeah.
And those were some of the most fun discussions because we could just tear it apart. And like it made it so I didn't like regret reading the book or giving that much of my reading time over to it because I know my like 800 book TBR is never being finished. I'm going to put another 50 books on it this month.
Right.
So, like, there are times where I'll read a book and have like regretted reading it because it sucks that I lost 2 days of my life to this thing that I didn't enjoy.
Yeah.
But with the book club community aspect of it, there's still like a payoff.
The conversation makes it worth having done it.
Speaking of community and conversation, so for those of us who have never been part of a book club or might want to be part of a book club but are nervous, what has our experience individually, like either outside the library, inside the library, what has that been like? Like what is a book club for the uninitiated, I guess? The vibe or the purpose of it, because a lot of us, I keep hearing us talk about conversation.
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
to me
yeah.
is like the biggest part of a lot of the book clubs that I've been in.
Yeah. Well, I know for the younger audiences, the book clubs that we have are age-based generally. And so for them, for the kids, it's kind of like there is a little bit of that communication and that the camaraderie of having read something together. But then also it's kind of it's a way of getting these kids to read books that they might not have otherwise have read, or to really motivate them to keep reading. I think in a way it's like a literacy tool for us to have these book clubs. Especially in most cases, the parents are like, I'm signing you up for this thing. You have no idea what this is. Here's the book. Read it. You have a thing in 2 weeks. And then the kid reads it and, you know, it kind of just goes from there. So...
Yeah, so the only book club that I have ever participated in, wow, was when I was in middle school. Our school librarian had a science fiction and fantasy book club that met after school. I don't remember even how often, but it is how I found a lot of my favorite books that to this day I read or listen to on repeat. The Enchanted Forest Chronicles, Tamora Pierce, Redwall all came from reading them for that book club. And I think that was kind of the first step into anything fandom-y for me, because we all would get really excited. We celebrated the end of the year with a Redwall feast where we didn't have the words to call it cosplay, but we dressed up as Redwall characters and made food that might have been in Redwall. And it was like, so it was very adjacent to fandom, which then makes a lot more sense with like, oh, I didn't get into fandom later when I thought I did. It actually started with this book club.
Yeah, that's really cool.
But that also wasn't something that like anyone said, you have to do this. It was, we're going to have this thing. And I went, okay. And I went and that worked. Sure.
I only have the experience of my work book club. So I can only really approach that question from like the moderator angle of it.
Yeah, that's the same for me.
Yeah.
Where, you know, my group is really good at going off on their own tangents and discussing things that are related to the book but still personal, and it's a really, really good conversation. I don't mean like I'm always sitting there and asking questions, getting answers, asking a new question, getting a new answer.
Yeah.
But I've never really been able to like unplug in those conversations because I have to be like ready for the next thing whenever there's a lull or if we're getting too far off topic.
Sure.
So I don't know that I've experienced it in the same way that a patron would or the same way that I would if I joined one on my own.
Yeah, I mean, facilitating a book club, I think, is probably a very different experience than being part of a book club yourself.
So what are the age ranges of the book clubs in youth?
So we have my first book group, which is kindergarten and first grade.
Yep.
Then we have Bookworms, which is second and third grade. And then Killian.
We have paperbacks and snacks, which is grades 4 through 6.
Yeah.
So that's our current roster. We've kind of shifted that around in the time that I've been at the library. We used to have like just a K through 3rd grade that was book club adjacent. We went through an iteration where we had a K2 and 3-5. We have had just all different ages, and it's just kind of what works for the community is generally what we go with. If something seems to not be popular anymore, we look at how can we adjust, how can we make it make sense so we're still serving those who want to come in and do this.
Sure.
So do you have young readers who go from one group to the next to the next?
In a
Like,
lot of cases, yeah, definitely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it
That's
is really, really cool.
And you get to know the kids too, probably, like from one stage to the next of, you know,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
One of the kids who did the summer D&D program that I did, so is somewhere between 10 and 13 now, and I think the upper age of that. I remember having him in the 2nd and 3rd grade book club.
Oh, wow.
Years
That
ago.
is such a cool
So-
thing.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
We're very lucky in that we get to see these families grow up kind of right
Yeah.
before our eyes,
Yeah.
which is really nice.
That is really nice.
Yeah. So what book clubs do you guys do over in adult services and teen?
We have
We have a lot.
8 of them.
Yeah, we have a lot.
That is crazy.
So 4 are general fiction, some nonfiction and memoirs in the mix, but like general lit ficky book club books. And those we separate out based on the time that we run them. So we've got a Tuesday morning, a Thursday morning, a lunchtime, which is in the afternoon, and a Monday night.
Okay.
And then we have 4 that are more subject-based. So we've got a mystery, a science fiction fantasy, a classics, and our newest one is called Pages Across Nations.
Okay.
And that is where every month they pick a different book that's been translated into English from another language
Oh, cool.
and read those. And over the course of the year, they bounce continent to
around.
continent,
Yeah.
as best they
Oh,
can.
That's really neat.
That's cool.
I
It's
like
a really
that.
fun setup.
Yeah, that sounds good. For sure. Well, how do we choose the books that we use for book clubs? I mean, for me personally, these are just books I love, and they fit the age recommendation basically. So if I have my first book group, I'm going to pick a picture book that I really liked recently that I want to share with these families, and I don't know, I think that's so fun.
One of the things that we run into with youth is we do buy the books and we give the books to them because kids' books are much more affordable than adult books would be. And we're really fortunate that the Friends of the Library gift us money to keep doing that and keep offering that to our families. But because of that, we tend to try to limit things to paperback releases. So it means we're not doing anything that's super, super new for the most part. Occasionally things will come out exclusively in paperback, or especially like graphic novels. The paperback is released right away. So we are limited in terms of that. But like Nicole, this is something that I've really liked, or this is something we do an activity with ours as well. And it's if I go, oh, I really know what activity I would do with this, because that just makes planning it easier.
Yeah.
So
For ours, we have an adult services collected pot of book club books
Oh, okay.
that we keep in back storage for the current year. It's about 40 books, maybe 30, 40, somewhere around there. And every year, each book club will put forth X number of books that we want to buy into the pot. I know for mine, I try and keep it like 4 or 5 that we purchase newly for the year. And then I will fill out the rest of the calendar with things that are already there that other book groups have added or that were added last year that I still want to cover. And try and fill out to 11 books that cover a good range of subject matters and narrators and time periods and things that way to give sort of a broad picture.
Sure.
And what's nice about that too is that some of the clubs rotate titles. So say like if the Thursday book club is reading like Remarkably Bright Creatures, for example, like in May, then another book group might be reading the same book in July or whatever. So because there is a lot of shared interest between what patrons of one club and the patrons of another club might be interested in reading.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just like we can all share the same resources and have similar conversations based around what our patrons are reading, what our patrons are interested in reading, and what we can acquire that's relatively new or is up and coming or is a repeated interest that comes up. So which is also really, really nice.
Yeah, I try to specifically pick one that like the mystery book club is added to the pool, one that the sci-fi club is added to the pool, because that adds the diversity to my list. And I can sort of focus what I'm acquiring on like the lit fic books that I'd actually be interested in.
Right.
For a change. As a general reader myself, I don't read much by way of lit fic. So those 11 or 12 books a year for the book club are some of the more diverse reading I really do outside of like my preferred genres.
Yeah.
So I really cherish it for that.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting remark to make too, because my most like storied experience with a book club was it went on for several years with some of my friends from college, and we found ourselves falling into exactly what you just mentioned, Drew, which was when we would make our roster for like our quote unquote like book club year, and we were just like 4 friends just getting together. But it was like one of our friends would often pitch something that was like young adult or sci-fi fantasy, and then someone else did a lot of like either nonfiction or dystopian, and then I had a lot of like classics and whatever. And then my friend Megan was the one of us who every time picked a book that we all liked. She was like the queen of picking awesome books. And for anything that Megan didn't pick, we were all like, well, it was okay. Emily, your suggestion was okay, but, a classic again, like, and it was sort of like, and it sort of became this like thing where even I was like at some point, okay, guys, no more dystopian.
Yeah.
Because we fell into this thing. And I think with such a small group, there was only 4 of us, it was like, it was so easy to get into this rut of this person picks this and this person picks that. And so we didn't have that broad scope of titles and stories and voices because we just had our niche interests.
The thing I kind of envy about the way you guys do book clubs in adult and teen services is that you sign up for a year.
Yeah.
Whereas we sign up month to month for ours. So you guys really get the opportunity to kind of get to know the group. Yeah. Whereas with our book clubs, there's a lot who come every month.
Absolutely.
But there's also some that, show up once and never again, and some that show up sporadically and things like that.
Yeah.
And so we don't pick our books all in one go. We kind of, whoever's running it that month, because we also don't all run the same one all the time.
True.
The next 3 months I have each age in one of the months. So we pick for whatever book clubs we have on our schedule. And we kind of talk to each other and try to figure out, so we're not doing, all graphic novels or all fantasy or all the same thing. So we have a variety. But it's it's hard to know what your group is going to be interested in because we have to pick it before registration even begins.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And there are so many patrons who are members of multiple clubs. And so that's another thing to be mindful of with the only downside, it's not even a downside, but just the year-long registration. You'll get this thing of folks who are in multiple clubs are reading multiple books more than once.
Yeah, I think our department head said that The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride was picked by 5 of our 8 book clubs over the course of this year.
Yeah,
wow.
Right.
And we're in a new registration period for the adult book clubs where we run them over the course of the school year. So our sessions run September to August. So we just finished picking all of the books for our upcoming year through August 2025.
Okay.
Right.
Wow.
And the registration for that is happening as of recording now.
Right. Yeah. And so it's one of those situations where a lot of the long-standing, very well-attended book clubs, like, will get all of the, like, the usual suspects will get their registration and will get on the roster, and then with some open spots for new people to contribute to the conversation. But a lot of the time it'll be like, oh, can I, it's October, November, and like, oh, a new person will want to register, and it's just like, and it's already getting pretty full. But it's nice, but it is nice that it doesn't, like, end of September, it's not like, well, we're done. It's at any point in the year, if you want to attend something like that, you're able to. So
I run the Monday night book club. So I have the only general fiction one that meets at night, which is why I think mine fills up so quickly.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's a convenient time for people who aren't retired.
Right, sure.
So I only have one seat left in my registration
Already?
for like the year.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And
Wow. As of today, anyway.
as of today.
Yeah.
And of the 19 that have registered, I think 9 are carryovers from the previous year.
Sure.
Oh, good.
And one is the husband of one of those
Okay. There you go.
who wanted to join and did come to a couple.
Okay.
So excited to expand it that way, but
You recruited.
yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. So how do we handle like conflicting opinions, or how do we ensure a respectful dialogue in our book clubs?
I think it's less of an issue with clubs that have been together for such a long time.
Yeah.
Because you're sort of having a friendly disagreement with a friend, someone you consider a friend. And I think in some cases people kind of know like who's going to like this and who's going to not like this.
I
And it's
see.
like, oh, I know
You know
someone's
each
going to
other
say
that
this about
well.
this or whatever. But like, I've not been in a situation, I don't think, either here with like library related book clubs and my own book. I think it only happened like once or twice where someone was like, well, I think this, and someone else was like, well, actually, like, but it does, like, I, like, very fortunately, not that I would ever worry about it with, our patronage, but it's like, it dies down very quickly, or it's friendly.
Sure,
It's friendly, yeah.
Yeah, with the kids, we're lucky if we get a conversation at all, let alone a riveting conversation or a heated conversation. So usually it's us just trying to like lure something
Trying
out
to
of
get more
children,
than one word.
asking questions about the book so that at least it's easy to answer and moving on to the activities because that's what they really want.
Yeah, so walk me and Emily through like a session of one of your book clubs. Like what do you do for it?
Okay, well, so I usually do the book club for the younger kids, and what I'll do is we'll read the book because it's usually a picture book and it doesn't take that much time. And then any of the kids that haven't actually read it can follow along with me as I'm reading this book. Then I ask like maybe 10 to 12 questions. That usually goes by pretty fast because a lot of the time the kids are like, really, why are you asking me this? And then afterward, I usually have 3 or 4 activities in the room that relate to the book that they can do before they go. So they usually have a craft that they can take. And then I did a book called Night Owl, which is about this owl that becomes a knight. Perfect,
It's a very
perfect title.
cute book.
Oh, KNIGHT.
Yes.
Yes.
Hey.
Yeah.
I highly
and-
recommend this picture book. It's so cute.
That's so
and
cute.
we did like pool noodle jousting.
Pool
So
noodle jousting.
the kid, I mean, of course, they just hit each other with the jousting things. But it was like a nice way to kind of bring the book
Oh,
to
yeah.
life so that they were
Absolutely.
able to interact with that a little bit better.
Yeah.
So that's what I do for the younger kids. Killian, you usually do the older kids.
Yeah, historically, I've mostly done paperbacks and snacks. So for that, it's going to be middle grade fiction or graphic novels. So we don't read it in the session. That would take too long. But we will talk about it. Generally, it is, we get a general temperature of like, who liked the book, who didn't like the book. We talk about how, like, it is okay to not like a book, and you can still talk about why you didn't like it and things like that. And we talk about how not every book is for every person. So it's okay for Susie to like a book, but for David to not like it, and vice versa.
Yeah.
I'm pulling random names out of nowhere here. For the record, these are not actual children that have had a disagreement. So we talk about the book. It is often really difficult to get them to answer with more than a word or two.
Yeah.
Occasionally, you'll get someone that feels really strongly about a book, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. And then we do some sort of activity or craft or both, depending on the book and what tie-ins I could find. There was one program that the book that we read was very video game based, and so I had a trial of a game that I was able to let them play on, and that was really cool because only one person could play at a time, and they were trying to problem solve how to play and help each other, and it was very cool to see them actively helping each other.
Yeah.
And then the kids that weren't waiting in line to play were working on doing some like binary code in bracelet form.
Wow.
And things like that. So it just depends on what the book is, really. We've done all sorts of crafts. I know one of the other librarians really likes to find related YouTube videos to show, things like that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So it just depends on the book.
That's awesome.
I know one of my favorite discussions that I've ever had was one where no one liked the book.
Yes, that's always fun.
We read, this was like 7 years ago, we read The Dinner by Herman Koch. And it's a book that, for the most part, just takes place around a dinner table in a restaurant. It's two couples. The men in both couples are brothers. That's how they all know each other. And it plays with, like, unreliable narrators and whose opinions you're supposed to believe, and like takes you through the gamut of all of that. And there was this woman who, it was her first meeting, and she's still in the book club today. We were literally just talking about this last night, who came in and she sat like kitty corner from me across the table and could not get her to say like anything, answer any of the questions that we had. I always bring a list of questions to like have different jumping off points. And like 40 minutes into it, I was straight up like, no, I'm going to get you to talk. So I was like, dear, insert name here, because I'm not going to say it. What were your core takeaway opinions on this one? And she just stared at me, and she flung down her fork, because we were at a restaurant for this. My book club used to be in a restaurant. And she just dropped her fork on her plate and said, they are all horrible people. And she would not expand on that. She just kept saying it. That was my only takeaway. I kept turning the page, and on every page, they were horrible.
But that's some of the most fun things to discuss, though, are like, especially, okay, I hate these characters. Are they well written? Are they good? Is it a good story? Are they good characters in spite of, I hate these characters?
Do you hate them because it was written in such a great way
Yes.
that you're really feeling it?
As to promote your hatred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't get into stuff like that with kids.
Yeah.
No.
They don't follow me when
No.
Right.
try to dig deeper
And it was a
like
great
that.
discussion, but it was so funny to finally find like her jumping in point to the conversation.
Yeah.
Of, no, I don't want to talk about the circumstances. I don't want to talk about the waiter. Screw these people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The takeaway, if you're in a book club and you hate something, talk about it. It's fun. We all
Yes.
love to hate things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if you may be the one saying the thing that everyone's thinking but not saying.
Yeah.
So go for it.
Yeah, just say it.
From the facilitator standpoint, the people who are willing to say, even if it's an unpopular opinion, but who are willing to say those things, they are the springboard for the most fun conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
I have had a few kids say things like, I really didn't like this character. And I'm like, great, let's talk more about that.
Yeah.
I remember one time when I was a TA, we were talking about I was facilitating like the class discussion, and I went in and I was like, okay, everyone raise your hand. Tell me, like, if you hate this book, raise your hand. And all the undergrads were like, are we allowed to do that? And I'm like, hands up if you hate it. I'm waiting. And like 6 or 7 people were like, well, I don't think I like it very much. And I was like, yes, great. Now we're going to talk about why you hate it. And it was like 20 minutes before I actually started doing instruction about the actual text.
Yeah.
Of warming up the room.
Yeah.
To get us all
You have
talking.
to break the
kind of
ice.
breaking the ice.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite things about book clubs it's a community thing. It's a conversation. It's a sharing of ideas and feelings and all of these things that whether you're like bonding over like a game or a craft or like pool noodle jousting or like how horrible the people are. It gives you this space to be together around something.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's really, really cool.
Definitely.
Yeah. This month into next month is the biggest like gap that we have because it's the end of the old registration, start of the new. So every year, and this is sort of the downside of doing the registration for a yearly thing.
Yeah.
What people are interested in August of 2023 is not something they're going to be willing to commit to in June of 2024.
That's true.
You know, they think this sounds like a fantastic idea for me at this moment.
Right.
Yes.
And
yes.
you know, life happens.
Sure.
Or it's just not their interest or, you know, what have you. So it's so different going from August to September because in September, I'm going to have a room of like 17, 18 people and we're going to have to spend so much time on that introduction and on that developing that comforting community space.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
compare that to like my July and August ones where I'll only have 6 or 7 people coming. But we've known each other over the course of the year
Right.
and we're
Yeah.
very able to jump back into that rhythm. I think we were deep diving into the book like 6 minutes in.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will see you next time. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Distracted Librarians.
If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to reach out to us at distracted@btpl.org.
Until then, keep those pages turning and those screens lighting up.
We'll catch you in the next episode.